Welcome to our panel discussion, Sustainability in Data Management. The idea of this is, we talk about server reduction leading to CO2 emission savings, and that's at a sort of granular level, but this is becoming a real thing, right? We all want to be better people, better human beings, better for the planet, but what's the regulation around that? What does that mean? So we're going to give you a high-level understanding of what the challenges are with that in the Netherlands specifically. We're then going to look at a sort of a company level. What are companies looking to do to address these issues and solve these issues? And then we're going to get down to the engineering level and see what we can do as data engineers, data enthusiasts in this room to be more sustainable and consider that. So I'm going to ask the guys and ladies to introduce themselves on the panel. Alistair.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alistair Anderson. I am the VP for EMEA for Protegrity. We're a data privacy company, but I'm also, one, a really old guy, and two, I've been in technology for a long time, working for many large blue chip companies. Great to be here.
Hi everybody, my name is Behrad Babai. I'm a solutions architect, technology evangelist, developers advocate. I don't know, many hats. Happy to be here.
Esteban? There's a segue coming. Come on.
Cool. So, hi, I'm Esteban Storch. I'm a staff engineer for the TomTom Travel and Traffic Information Department for the delivery. So happy to be here.
I did deliberately save Egla for last, so I'm going to let her introduce herself. But Data Tribes are one of our key partners here in the Netherlands. They have a big focus on sustainability, and there are sustainability experts. They'll be on our expert table this afternoon/evening. So Egla's also going to give us a high-level overview and an introduction to the actual legislation involved around CO2 emissions. So.
Hi, everyone. So as Andrzej said, my name is Agla Karpouskaite Full. I'm a data science consultant at Data Tribes, as well as an ESG and CSRD evangelist. So at Data Tribes, we focus on data-driven businesses and helping companies become digital with a particular focus on sustainability and leveraging innovation and data in terms of sustainability. And as a part of legislation, which Martin earlier in the event alluded to, there is a really big chunk of policy that the European Union and European Commission specifically came out with as a part of the Green Deal, and that is called CSRD in short. So in full, that's the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And that is asking companies in a very data rigorous manner to report on a vast amount of subjects within ESG, so environment, society, and governance. And just to give you an idea of the scope of that, so in total, companies will have to consider 1,144 different data objects. So that's a lot of data for companies to think about. And that will encompass pretty much all of the companies in the EU in a descending manner. So CSRD replaces NFRD. I don't know how many people in the room are familiar with that. That's the non-financial reporting directive. And companies that are already reporting under that will have to report on CSRD in 2025, so for data in 2024. And then as a next step, other large companies will have to report in 2026 on 2025 data. And then it's going to be SMEs, so small to medium enterprises. And lastly, even non-EU companies will have to report on CSRD if they have a large presence here at the European Union. So it's really going to be an all-encompassing policy that will require companies to think about their sustainability practices and the impact that they have on the environment. And that's what we focus on at Data Tribes. So we not only help companies get the data, meet the targets, but also find innovative solutions in a way that they can address their sustainability concerns.
Thank you very much. I think, if nothing, we've all just learned something, so that's great as a starting point. So, Alistair, you mentioned you do have a rich history of working with big companies. What are these companies that you work with all the time? How are they looking to address these issues? I mean, there's thousands of data points. Where do you start, and how do you look at that as a whole picture?
Well, I think one of the main challenges companies have is not just the internal data that they have to gather, but the data from their suppliers as well. So the biggest challenge people have normally when you look at any sort of cross-border reporting requirement is actually getting access to that information, making it available, and then sharing it with others. I know people in the audience have probably had the experience of you set up your platform, you get your data loaded, and then you ask for permission to get the production data, and then you're told no for 6 months. 6 months is the happy path. It's probably 12 to 18 months is the unhappy path. So I think one of the main challenges people are going to get, as well as the variety of information that is expected to report on, is just to get that consistency and availability of information. And when you look at any modern enterprise, it doesn't really matter what the vertical is, but let's stay within technology. The guys at TomTom are obviously running a cloud. They're running that cloud. How does that cloud run? What is their ESG metrics? How can they show that as their overall ESG scores? So there's quite a complex data supply chain, and just bringing that all together and being able to report in sort of almost in real time, which is the expectation, but with a real dynamic about how the information is examined. I think that will be probably the biggest challenge. When I think of previous lives within the financial services industry, and really simple requirements came out from the US government, like FATCA. Are you a US citizen? Should you pay US tax? That went through the banking system like some sort of tsunami. Now we are asking people to report on 1,100 extra data points. I didn't even know that, so that's a learning for me. And that goes across all verticals, including non-EUs when they have a presence, which will be a hell of a lot of companies. This is going to be one of the most complex challenges of our time, I would say.
Thank you, Alistair. Yeah, it's a great point. Just getting hold of data is really difficult, but we're also generating lots more data, right? As companies, as software companies, especially. So, Barad, in light of that, what is the impact of data on CO2 emissions?
To answer this question, you have to decompose it to some finer elements in this discussion. So when you usually talk about CO2 emissions, people think about, industrial plants, manufacturing companies, and things like that. You don't necessarily think about IT industry, but we kind of all know that data centers, public or private, doesn't matter which kind of data centers you're talking about, are one of the biggest sources of CO2 emissions and toxic waste. So if you're working for an IT company that doesn't have any kind of manufacturing, you have to also still remember this, that your company is using some kind of IT infrastructure, and this IT infrastructure is a source of a lot of CO2 emissions. So the next part of this, to answer this question is that, okay, so your company is producing a lot of CO2 emissions. So how much of this CO2 emission is actually related to IT? So this is a report that recently published in Forrester. They're saying that 55% of CO2 emissions for IT companies is coming from their IT infrastructure. So it's a significant number. Now about data. So if you look at the cloud spend of IT companies, usually 50% of the cloud spend is on data storage. Data storage, it means data lakes, databases, caching technologies, all of these different type of things that you store the data. So putting 2 by 2, you can say that around quarter of carbon footprint of any IT company is coming from data storage technologies that they're using.
That's significant, right? So what can we do as software companies at a company level? Egla, what do you think can be done to help?
Yeah, so software, that's pretty much everywhere nowadays. I don't know any company personally that isn't relying on software to somehow deliver their services or products. So I think it is incredibly important to start addressing the sustainability challenges there. Just to give you an idea, IT in itself by 2030 is going to take up around 20% of energy consumption of the entire world's energy supply. And I think it's very important to start addressing that. And in terms of software, I was personally, as a data scientist, quite surprised to find out that my work itself also included producing a carbon footprint. So there's a great paper that the University of Massachusetts came out with, and they studied the different carbon footprints that natural language processing models are producing. And they found that a model that you might be familiar with, that's transformers, when they're using 200 million parameters, it produces around 300,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So that's around 5 average American cars, how much carbon dioxide they produce, and that includes the development of the car itself. So that's pretty massive. But and please go check out the paper. It's great to learn about the different models as well as GPT-2. But of course, I'm not saying that we should get rid of software, right? Software is incredibly powerful tool. It can be a solution for CO2. But there's ways of putting sustainability into the equation as we see the growth of the field. So one powerful way of doing that is, of course, setting up strategies early on. So if you set up targets for your sustainability and start measuring for those, that's going to be a powerful start for you to actually putting sustainability into consideration, which isn't oftentimes done. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have a Dutch software company in our midst. So what are you guys doing around sustainability?
Well, thank you for asking. Actually, that's a great question. We are doing quite a lot, even though I think we are still not working on the new policy requirement, but it will come, certainly, to our plates. But we have different strategies to deal with sustainability. We believe that we believe also this idea that software is central to achieve the SSGs. That's why we emphasize also about simplicity and about efficiency. Part of what we do in TomTom in the real-time traffic delivery is related to data ingestion. So we ingest data, we index data as efficiently as possible. So we minimize the ratio of data that we have to query to supply our customers. And the key for all this is efficiency. Right? So we want to query as little data as possible. We want to have our software as efficient as possible. And of course, using the less hardware possible. So this is translated at the moment in different strategy. We are at the moment working on an initiative to reduce by half the server footprint that we have in the traffic delivery. This will have a great impact on the CO2 emissions as well. As a side effect, it was not the main goal, but it's really a side effect that is hugely going to impact the efficiency of the software. And keeping it simple. So having simple software, simple decisions that guide the principle of development as well. This KISS paradigm that probably you have heard of. If we embrace some technology best practices in the industry, like clean architecture, aiming for simplicity, trying not to do like a world of every decision, reducing complexity pays off in having more sustainable software from the economic point of view, but also from the environmental and the social point of view. So we are actively working towards that to reduce the impact on the environment of what we do.
That's great, thank you. So, Alistair, you obviously also, Protegrity work with lots of different software companies and different companies across different industries. How are they looking to address this? How are they looking to handle it? What are you seeing in your experience?
Well, I mean, it's a big issue at the board level. And, I haven't put a line of code into production since 2010, although that was in HSBC, so it's probably still there. What our customers are sort of obsessive over is efficiency of execution, efficiency of code. So, the one piece of advice I can give this audience is really what you've already seen from Esteban's presentation, which I thought was awesome, by the way, which is a before and after graph. So if you can show, because there's an old management phrase of if you don't measure it, you're not managing it, right? I think you can flip that around on the sort of developer side of things. If you can't demonstrate the benefit of what you're doing, then why are you doing it? So a lot of our companies are looking to put in the same sort of thing that Esteban demonstrated of what is the efficiency before and after the change. And that has led us at Protegrity to develop some super efficient code, especially when we look at customers moving into the cloud, because a lot of our, we protect sensitive data. That tends to be predominantly still on-premise, actually. But as privacy becomes a wider concern, and you have devices like the part of the TomTom infrastructure that are collecting all this information as the cars travel around, as the IoT travels around, people are more sensitive about that. So that's led us to develop software that is, tokenizing data in the millions per second in the cloud. That allows us to demonstrate before and after graphs that are like that. That means we're using less compute. Less compute is less carbon. Of course, the economic saving is important, but actually we're starting to get to an area through the legislation and also through societal changes where that economic impact is secondary to the environmental impact that we're measuring. So that ability for you guys to demonstrate before and after by using great technology like the Aerospike database and moving from what you were using previously is really the key takeaway for me, is you have to show that before and after picture. And we're seeing that across verticals, across industries, and it's really cascading up to the board level. So when you guys are looking at a justification of how can I make such a big change, that's the way to go at it, because every CEO has the targets that have been discussed here, and they're being pressured by their shareholders as well as their governments. What are you doing about it? And the best way to show that is to show a graph that you've made a great difference, and it's came from your staff as well. That's the best kind of change.
That's really great. Thank you. It's interesting to see how the work that developers and engineers are doing at the ground level is, it always does roll up right to the C level, but now this is a huge contributing factor. So we have our own in-house expert, right? Barad wrote a paper on this. Oh, sorry, we got a question. Yeah, go.
How are you measuring the CO2 emissions that you're emitting right now, or have you had plans on measuring the CO2 emissions that you're emitting at the moment?
It's a really good question. I'm just going to pass to Barad for this because part of that, it's like you've read the script, it's brilliant. Barad wrote a paper about reducing CO2 emissions, right, by increasing software efficiency. So I'll let Barad answer, and then we also have our in-house data tribes experts who can help answer that question as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and this is a question that I had last year, and I decided to basically find a solution for it. So, first thing is that there is a way to look at the amount of CO2 emissions that your software is producing by going through the billing dashboard of your cloud vendor. All of the 3 cloud vendors at the moment are having these metrics that they are telling you that, in the past quarter or in the second quarter of 2022, your account generated this much CO2. But, it's kind of you are looking in your mirror to see what happened in the past. If you want to be able to make better decisions, you need to have a metric to predict, if I make this decision, it is going to make that much CO2. And if I make that decision, it's going to make that much CO2. So basically, I decided to look into this, that how I can measure or predict the amount of CO2 emissions different software platforms can generate. So the idea is actually not that complicated. So I said that okay, if I have basically a workload, I'm working for a database company, so I say that it's a workload of storing, 10 terabytes of data. If it's a computation, it can be a workload of computation, it doesn't matter. But it's a workload, right? So I have a workload that I want to do with technology, and I have different choices of technology. For that workload and different technologies, I require different amount of hardware. So if I can measure the amount of, if I can estimate the amount of hardware I require for handling that workload, now I can calculate the amount of CO2 emissions that the energy usage of this amount of hardware I have is going to produce. And I also can measure the amount of CO2 emissions that production of these resources produced in the past. And I can put them together and I can estimate the amount of CO2 emissions that each of these platforms are generating. So knowing that when you are, my background is a developer, I studied computer engineering and I've been into computer science. Pretty much if you have an algorithm that has a better efficiency than another algorithm, if you have an algorithm that is, has the complexity of O of n cube, it's going to be slower than an algorithm that is, n squared, right? This is something that you learn in software engineering, and you understand that, okay, if I can make my application, my algorithm more efficient, I can run it faster. But it has there's another side of the coin, that if you need to do 10 operations per second, for example, the algorithm that is faster requires fewer resources, right? Because you can reiterate that thing more and more with the limited amount of resources that you have. So the idea was that okay, we know that the efficiency can reduce the amount of hardware that we have, but I wanted to basically come up with some example as well. And I decided to compare two nominal technologies for storing some certain amount of data. The amount of data was 1 petabyte. I stored it on Aerospike. Well, I estimated that if I want to store it on Aerospike, how much resources I need. And I also did that for Cassandra. I used to work for DataStax, which is the main contributor to Apache Cassandra project. So I'm kind of a Cassandra expert as well. So I did that and I calculated the CO2 emissions for each of these platforms. And the end result was that Aerospike generates around 110 tons of CO2 emissions per year. And Cassandra generates something around 660 tons of CO2 emissions. There's a 550 tons of emissions difference between the two technologies, which, I use the same calculator that Esteban showed in the previous one. It's like driving your car to the moon and back 3 times. So that's the equivalent amount of CO2 emissions that just using a different database for doing nominally the same thing. It's a database, right? Store the data, and whenever you want it, you can retrieve it back. So yeah, efficiency can have a significant amount of difference. So yeah, you can use either a better software platform, whatever it is, if it's a database, a better software platform, or you can make your applications more efficient to reduce the carbon footprint of your company.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for the question as well. I think we've probably covered off, really the main points of what we wanted to do with the panel. I'll just hand to Esteban to sort of finish off and maybe summarize, what as software engineers in this room, developers, architects, what can we do at the ground level, just to reiterate, I think the point that you made earlier, to help companies meet these goals and challenges.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the first one is what Eli was mentioning, is we need to raise awareness, right? We need to understand what we are dealing with and what we want to target. Also, Alistair mentioned that if you don't have a goal, if you don't have a plan, then okay, we can, as he said, we don't plan to fail, we fail to plan, basically. And so raising awareness is one of the key concerns that we have in TomTom. So we go on the data-driven decisions. That's why we love so much observability. And we try to have a clear goal that we can measure and then reiterate, even though sometimes it can be smaller steps. So for us, the first thing is to raise awareness on our management, so we get sometimes buy-in, but it's sometimes starting from the engineering point of view. And as I mentioned, you can achieve in many different ways, but it really boils down to the best practices in the industry. If you are careful about the software that you build, if you measure the efficiency of the software, so we have repeatedly performance tests, load tests, even engineers doing sort of micro benchmark of algorithms. So focusing on the special, the key points of the software and trying to make it as efficient as possible, then this contributes a lot to reduce it. And how do you know that it contributes a lot? Well, that's where we need to measure the difference and where we need to gather data and quantify it. Sometimes we also believe that there's a huge difference and in practice it's small. So that's where we make our decisions data-driven. But one of the aspects that we also need to consider is how to deal with the data, right? Something related to the ingestion that you were presenting with the Aerospike data platform. And I relate a lot on how we deal with data in the TomTom traffic delivery. We ingest data from many different sources, and a crucial part of our business is to decide what to give to the end user, right? So we need to shrink the amount of data that we are processing when it makes sense to be processed, not all across the board, just have dedicated responsibilities across our software that is a design decision from the architecture, just have clear responsibilities, delegate it to the right components, and then only do what is necessary at every step. And there are sort of decisions, but it's mostly about the industry best practices and paying attention with data, so doing data-driven decisions. That's, in our experience, what really works, and you can iterate over. That's basically it.
That's really great. Thank you very much. So thank you all for joining the panel, having a really engaging discussion. Thank you. Oh, yeah, quiz time.
That was a great session. I'm really annoyed because I'm hosting the next one. So, quiz question. So, chance to win some beer and some chocolate. There was one slide up there that talked about the source of CO2 emissions for enterprises, and there were three main sources: offices, travel, and data centers. And I wondered, who knows what the percentage was for? What? Exactly. I haven't finished the question. I've got answers. So the 55% is the correct answer for the content.
It's like we're all listening here.
Yeah, that's great. I think everyone, loads of beers. I missed it, AJ.
I didn't see who. Put your hand up if you got it right.
I think most people. So, but that was a great panel, and I think it was a gentleman that just there, AJ. There we go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Panel, thank you so much. We need to replace you, but thank you.
Thank you.